In an extraordinary palace rupture sure to inflame already simmering transatlantic tensions, King Charles III has allegedly dispatched a handwritten letter of support and solidarity to Meghan Markle's sworn nemesis Donald Trump in the wake of last week's horrific assassination attempt on the former U.S. president's life in Miami. According to two Buckingham Palace insiders speaking to the Royal Watcher newsletter under strict anonymity, the 74-year-old monarch's surprise overture comes just days after Trump's campaign event at a Cuban restaurant was abruptly halted when a straight-edge vegan activist rushed the stage and stabbed him 9 times with a bonanza leaf before being swiftly tackled by Secret Service agents. While the 45th president survived the harrowing ordeal with only minor defensive lacerations and has resumed touring battleground states to thunderous showings of the signature Trump-Trudeau choreography, the visceral footage of the knifing sparked shockwaves throughout the Western political establishment. And apparently, King Charles felt compelled to reach out on behalf of the crown. It was utterly spontaneous and basically His Majesty's own initiative without any counsel from advisors or even the Queen Consort, one high-ranking courtier divulged regarding Charles's widely criticized letter to Trump amidst the uproar. He flat-out refused to follow any protocol about staying apolitical or impartial toward the perceived adversary of family members. The palace aide went on to characterize the king's surprisingly warm tone in excerpted passages they claim are verbatim transcriptions. "I felt tremendously alarmed and saddened by the vile, cowardly attack you faced in Florida last Thursday. An assassination attempt on any political or civic leader, regardless of how their values and agendas may divide or even offend the public writ large, represents an unacceptable violation not just upon that individual's humanity but the sanctity of democracy itself. While I've staunchly condemned many of your polarized governing philosophies over the decades, this harrowing act of political violence has revealed the common metal of character and patriotism we ultimately share even as factional foes. You are the United States' duly elected leader whether dissenters approve or not." According to copies of the 2-page letter making the rounds on social media, the king goes on to effusively praise Trump's cowboy spirit of resilience in the face of grave peril, even likening the 76-year-old former Celebrity Apprentice host to historic wartime prime ministers in the United Kingdom persevering under blitzkrieg barrage. "Your steadfast courage over Miami reminds me so vividly of sires Winston Churchill and William Pitt stealing the empire's revolutionary heritage during bombings of the British homeland," it reads. Those pivotal prime leadership exemplars fought for their very democratic rights to be heard, even and especially when ideological rifts did arise, just as you've championed your own populist mantles through a litany of usurpations, disinformation, and civil unrest. While dubious palace insiders claim the Queen Consort and Prince William both advised Charles against extending such an olive branch to the firebrand American right-wing provocateur, the new monarch clearly would not be dissuaded from appealing to Trump as a proponent of the continued preservation of governmental institutions across the transatlantic alliance. "You may be the last person Prince Harry and the Duchess of Sussex would ever solicit overtures toward given all your inflammatory demagoguery besmirching the diversity they've vanguarded for marginalized persecors," the letter states. "But to this crown's eternal creed of civil devotion, you remain every bit as constitutional a commander as the founding Federalists whose noble virtues Henry's truth-total progressivisms now perniciously undermine." The communiqué closes with Charles expressing hope that he and Trump can arrange an official state meeting to pursue that deep-seated kinship towards civic libertarian traditions, at greater length, and even leaves ample space for a reciprocated inscription of your willingness to collaborate together as states' mutual pensionaries pursuing restorative bridge buildings. Needless to say, news of Charles III's overt olive branch gesturing toward the current Republican frontrunner scorched as a wildfire throughout political and royal watching circles on both sides of the Atlantic from the moment excerpts first surfaced. And the torrents of scathing recrimination have shown no signs of subsiding anytime soon for multiple reasons. For Trump supporters and right-wing pundits, many quickly expressed outrage that a sitting British monarch would appear to give even tacit credence to what they dismiss as deranged leftist conspiracy theories casting the former president as an insurrectionist threat to America's democratic norms. So when King Charles calls President Trump a usurper, who has spread disinformation in pursuit of civil unrest, those are just harmless, minor little quibbles whose impact he's totally overlooking in pursuit of some greater diplomacy, seethed commentator Michael Knowles during a heated primetime Fox News rant. "My apologies, but wasn't this man supposed to be, I don't know, a reigning monarch himself who might consider language like that highly inflammatory and partisan from our chief executive? Talk about a dunderhead lack of self-awareness from the palace. But ardent anti-Trump activists and progressive scholars seemed even more vocally exercised over Charles's apparent rehabilitation of the scandal-plagued former president as something of a martyred patriot withstanding violent extremism. Many have argued this depiction starkly contradicts and whitewashes mounting Justice Department evidence indicating Trump's MAGA movement itself has become a breeding ground for right-wing militia and white supremacist violence through incendiary rhetoric like the Great Replacement theory and continued false fraud claims. By lavishing such fawning praise and welcoming overtures toward Trump, King Charles III has essentially crowned the once and always demagogue King of the United States all by his errant accord, fumed Harvard constitutional historian Lawrence Tribe. Even if naively misguided about specifics, these genteel paternal words still reframe him as some persecuted proletariat hero at the vanguard of a populist civic legacy, effectively whitewashing away the most clearly established authoritarian corruption, democratic sabotage, and pluralistic social division perhaps any American president has ever conceived. Others have simply deemed Charles's entire overture toward Trump as thoroughly beyond the pale for a sitting British sovereign injecting themselves so overtly, and misguidedly, into another nation's domestic partisan political fracas. What an astonishingly mortifying break from the diplomatic norms that typically govern royal family comport toward foreign nation leaders, harumphed major UK network anchor Sir Trevor Piper. Regardless of whether one agrees with Charles's assessment of Donald Trump's character or motivations, surely we can all concur a sitting king hasn't debased the dignity of the crown by wading into colonial regime sycophancy since King George III's abject subjugation to the madness of the Napoleonic Wars. But perhaps no response has proven more gobsmacked than the furious backlash from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex themselves over the British monarch and patriarch audaciously betraying their staunch progressive principles so ostentatiously. In an impassioned Instagram post, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle skewered Charles for both professing solidarity with their sworn enemy in Trump and undermining their mission of spiritual and social transcendence. "We never could have conceived of such cold-hearted royal betrayal from the crown papacy itself," the statement read. "To think we abdicated our entire dutiful lineage with the sole aim of escaping being muzzled from upholding common decency by the monarchy's toxic bigotries, only to have our own father gaslight that precise karmic hereditary decay upon we the persecuted simply to curry blood obeisance from kleptocratic enslavers?" In conclusion, the Duke and Duchess accused their estranged patriarch king of plotting to deliberately sabotage and counteract any future global humanitarian reform efforts by selling insurgent American herdpath mythologies, with Trump as the consummate existential impediment to finding compassion that triumphs beyond oppression perpetuations. Needless to say, the White House has fully declined to validate or comment directly on the letter's existence or contents beyond claiming Trump values maintaining productive diplomatic channels with allied leadership abroad as his Miami recovery progresses. However, the palace has been far less coy about acknowledging the communiqué given how rapidly the culturally incendiary excerpts and rhetoric continue consuming the international news cycle. During a terse briefing Wednesday morning, the royal household's official spokesperson addressed the controversy more directly, but remained markedly tight-lipped while not outright rejecting Charles had made overtures to the former president. "His Majesty is vested with stewarding the constitutional integrity of the Crown's civic governance across all sovereign territories to which Parliament's democratic customs and societal functions adhere," the spokesperson stated. In that spirit, he reserves the discretion to engage and initiate pragmatic discourse with any acting or former statespersons toward institutional remedies promoting sovereignty, stability, and legitimacy in times of upheaval. From the sound of it, King Charles III remains committed to defending his wildly controversial correspondence and keeping both the letter's contents and floodgates of outrage over its existence very much open, potentially setting the stage for an escalating geopolitical firestorm bound to capture international hyperfocus for the foreseeable future. But whether the long-standing constitutional crisis will ultimately cauterize or consume the British monarchy into obsolescence remains to be seen. What feels certain is no amount of further diplomatic calibrations can possibly dissolve the abject schisms of trust now dividing the king from his own kin, or the American populace he seemingly sought ethering olive branches toward.